Good morning, Abundant Life Church. This is Pastor Chris. Today we're going to be looking at John chapter 12, verses 1 down through 11. Everybody remembers their first car. My first car, actually bought from my dad for $700, still remember that. It was a 69 Volkswagen Beetle. This was back in the days when everybody drove Volkswagen Beetles. By the time I got the car, though, it had seen better days. And I didn't really do a lot to maintain the car. I just put gas in it and drove it. Pretty soon, the transmission started to go out. After a while, my car had no first gear. And then after a while after that, it had no reverse. So when I parked, if I wanted to back out, I would open the door and, stick my foot out like Fred Flintstone and push my car out there out of parking spaces. Pretty soon, the car second gear started to go out. That car was falling apart quickly. I had bumped into posts over the years. It was full of dents. It was a college student's beater car. And around that time, there was a punk rock group. I don't listen to punk rock, but I had heard about them because there were several stories about them in the newspaper. Because at their concerts, they would blow up a Mercedes Benz on stage. And I remember when I read that thinking to myself, you know, we could trade. I mean, wouldn't it be a cooler thing to blow up a 69 Volkswagen Bug that was falling apart anyways and just give me the Mercedes? You can blow my VW up. Seriously, how's that not a bad trade? You see, that kind of is how people have thought all along. There's always that idea of, couldn't we spend money on something better than this? It's always been around. When they first started going to the moon back in the 60s, people complained this is so expensive. Couldn't the money be spent on feeding the poor instead? It's not a bad point. Excuse me. But what about when Judas makes that same point? In this story that we're going to look at, Judas gets irritated that Mary wasted all this perfume on Jesus. We're going to pause for a second. Sorry about that. I think I'm all right. Anyways, in the story we look at, Jesus is being anointed with perfume, very expensive perfume. And Judas says, hey, couldn't this money have been sold? Couldn't the perfume be sold and the money used to help the poor? That's not a bad point. Now, we know that what he really wanted was this money for himself. But aside from that, aside from his terrible motives, his point is sorry about that. His point is kind of logical. Couldn't they have made better use of this money? Again, Judas's motives are awful, but his logic isn't bad. What Mary, the woman who was anointed his feet, did here was an extravagant waste. And usually, when you anoint a guest, you give him a drop, and you usually anoint his head, not his feet. Look at verses 1 through 3. 6 days before the Passover, Jesus came to Bethany, where Lazarus lived, whom Jesus had raised from the dead. Sorry. Here a dinner was given in Jesus' honor. Martha served, while Lazarus was among those reclining at the table with him. Then Mary took about a pint of pure nard, an expensive perfume. She poured it on Jesus' feet and wiped his feet with her hair, and the house was filled with the fragrance of the perfume. This is Mary and Martha, sisters of Lazarus, and they're having a dinner to honor Jesus, to thank him. He had brought Lazarus back from the dead, so Mary uses this perfume. She'd probably been saving this perfume up. You see, these kinds of perfumes were used to anoint people when they died. So having this, it was a very precious thing. It was almost an heirloom. And you didn't just go wasting it. It was for Mary. She was saving it for her own burial because it was the most valuable thing that she had. Instead, she anoints Jesus with it, but she anoints his feet. You didn't wash somebody's feet. We're going to see that later on. when we get to the foot washing. This was not something commonly done, but Mary did it to honor Jesus, and she humbled herself to do this. Now, to say the least, what she was doing was unusual, and it was taken as an unusual thing. Look at verses 4 through 6. But one of his disciples, Judas Iscariot, who was later to betray him, objected. Why wasn't this perfume sold and the money given to the poor? It was worth a year's wages. He did not say this because he cared about the poor, but because he was a thief. As a keeper of the money bag, he used to help himself to what was put into it. All right, yes, Mary did something unusual, and probably nobody there quite knew what to make of it or quite knew, is this appropriate or not? And then Judas speaks up. Now, we know Judas's motives. We know Judas was a thief, that he'd been stealing out of the money bags the disciples had to pay for food and lodging, that type of thing. And Judas saw this as an opportunity to steal more money. Okay, terrible motives, but again, he has a point. They could have helped the poor with this money, but now it's gone. The perfume is poured out. It has no value now. It's poured out over Jesus' feet, and that does seem like a little bit of a waste, doesn't it? Well, after Judas points this out, here's Jesus' response, verses 7 and 8. Leave her alone, Jesus replied. It was intended that she should save this perfume for the day of my burial. You'll always have the poor among you, but you won't always have me. That doesn't come across very well, does it? You always have the poor, but you don't always have me. Now, is that statement true? Yeah. But it doesn't seem very caring. It doesn't seem very humble, does it? Yes, it's true. But it kind of leaves a bad taste in our mouth, even though it's Jesus himself saying this. I remember I grew up an Oakland A's fan. Loved the old Reggie Jackson, Joe Rudy, Vida Blue days. But in the late 80s, they were great again. They won the World Series. And their big superstar was Ricky Henderson, the most phenomenal base stealer of all time. Holds the record for most bases stolen in a single year. The old record was 96, I think it was. He stole 130 bases in 1 year. And pretty soon he was getting close to the career record held by Lou Brock. And on the day he broke Lou Brock's record and had the most stolen bases of anyone in baseball history, they stopped the game. They had a big ceremony. Lou Brock himself was there. They brought him out on the field. And now Lou Brock is standing next to Ricky Henderson. They put a mic right up there so they could both say a few words. And this is what Ricky Henderson said. Today, or he said, before this, Lou Brock was the greatest base stealer of all time. But now I'm the greatest. Okay. Was that statement true? Yeah, it was. But you can see how uncomfortable everybody was. Lou Brock was standing right there. And you just said he's not as good as me. Okay, it's true, but do you really need to point that out? You see, we don't do well with people behaving in an arrogant manner, even if what they're saying is true. Jesus said, the poor you always have with you, you won't always have me. True. But it doesn't come across well. And how does that really address Judas's objection, which actually had some merit to it? You could have sold this money or sold this perfume and helped the poor with it. Well, the answer is obviously found in our next session. Till then, have a great day.